excited to introduce our presenter today, Cernicek. Sorry, it's Dave Cernicek. He's the Wild and Scenic Rivers Special Uses Partnership and River Ranger for Bridger-Teton National Forest. So Dave, welcome, and thank you for presenting today. We're excited for this.
Okay, well, thank you, Angie. Let me pull up my stuff. Okay, good morning or good afternoon to everybody. My name is David Cernicek. I work for the Bridger-Teton National Forest in western Wyoming at the southern end of the greater Yellowstone ecosystem. I manage the Snake River Headwaters Wild and Scenic designation, which is 415 miles designated as the Snake River watershed, the Snake and its tributaries. The Forest Service has 315 miles. There's the rest of it is a little bit for Fish and Wildlife Service in the National Elk Refuge and Grand Teton National Park and Yellowstone National Park. Talking about river emergency successes today, and we'll get moving. Let's see here. Let me move things around here just real quick. So, yeah, that'll work. No. Sorry, having technical difficulties here just a sec. Yeah, that'll work. So, Snake River Canyon is part of that, and that's management unit I'm talking about today. It sits over two counties, Teton and Lincoln counties. It's got pretty heavy traffic, lots of tourist and river traffic through it. It runs alongside a federal highway. And let's see, last year we did in the commercial sector, whitewater customers, we had over 114,000 commercial customers on 8 miles of river, and probably another 70,000 non-commercial that did 1 or 2 trips each, or 2 or 3. We have a big upstream crowd that does inner tubes and a lot of drinking. They come on the holidays too. And a little bit dark slide, but you can sort of see what we are. We're kind of a mountainous environment, just kind of a nice green canyon with lots of trees and stuff like that. Not terribly flat, lots of canyon walls, lots of steepness to it. And we have basically 5 upper ramps and this one big one at the bottom is kind of the catch-all for those upstream ramps, which this last ramp is kind of hard to access, and it brings us a lot of problems just because so many other ramps send so much supply of people down to it that we get so many users there, and it's hard to get people in and out. The ramps, it's the only place geographically where we can fit in an access spot. We have on this river, we have sort of big industrial sized ramps, more like lake ramps, 5 lanes wide. And this is the non-commercial ramp here. And just upstream from it is the commercial ramp. So you're kind of looking at a thing like that. All the parking is way up the hill, stuff like that. We get huge amount of use, and there's only so many boats that can come off this river at a time in a given day, and trying to keep that number of boats coming off at a rational number and in a way that people aren't throwing fists or blocking each other or blocking others in or keeping other people from being able to pull in or out is always quite a challenge. We usually run with a decent size, not a big, but usually have about 8 or 9 rangers on crew, plus a few more in management in a given summer. We're usually limited by trucks, how many trucks we can obtain. It's one of our major pieces of safety equipment. Drownings aren't uncommon. We do get them, sometimes 2 or 3 a year, sometimes none. Sometimes we get 4 or 5. It's not as much dependent on water level as just stupidity level or alcohol level, that type of thing. We have a huge amount of highway interface that brings rivers and brings rivers, rangers, and rollovers together. We have, both the Hoback and the Snake have fairly heavy use highways that run alongside of them. And quite a few people, especially commuters who drive really, really fast in them. Being out here sort of leaves us with river rangers sort of being the first responders to anything happening in the corridor, whether it's on the highway or on the river. You know, we're probably about 45 minutes from any other responding agencies showing up. In Wyoming, a lot of our responders are volunteer based, whether it's fire or EMS. Cops aren't, but search and rescue is. So, you know, there's a few more added minutes for people to get to their station, get decked out and get in the vehicle and start coming this direction. And so I don't know about everybody here today. I work for the Forest Service. We're not really a rescue agency, nor is the BLM. You know, only the Park Service is really a quotes rescue agency that is supposed to be doing rescues. We're a concurrent jurisdiction, and Sheriff's Department is supposed to take care of that in our counties. But when all heck is breaking loose and you're the guy in a federal truck in a federal uniform, everybody's looking at you to do something wonderful. And you can't really just hand out maps or something. It's you know, there's an expectation that you're going to do something and you're going to be of some level of help. And we do have quite a bit of time sometimes between when help comes and help doesn't, and help gets there. And being able to do something productive and being able to have happy endings is kind of what this is all about. And a lot of that is preloading things. And what I'm talking about today is my 10 P's of successful endings and what I've done for the past 23 years on this section of river. We, as I said, we're the first ones to be at a lot of different places. And you know, sometimes these will be situations where we have, you know, 3 or 4 different people getting CPR when we roll up, and things are getting bad and there's already blood. And we have an amazing bunch of river guides here. Even the shuttle drivers sometimes turn out to be like ex-paramedics, that type of stuff. We usually have a lot of hospital workers going through the corridor that have also been very helpful, but we do get into some really grisly scenes, and a lot of times our patients leave here in a helicopter. And so, you know, just having my people get there sometimes and start blocking the highway, or, you know, start sorting patients, doing a multi-casualty incident preparation, of figuring out who the walking wounded is, who needs medical attention really fast, or they're not going to make it, and who's too far gone, is you know, valuable things that we can do. We also can talk in our responding agencies, what, you know, figure out what we have going on, what needs to be done, and start setting up our responding agencies and what type of resources they're bringing with them and what else they need to be sending us. We have a huge rental boat use on our river, whether they're coming from out of state or each of the little towns around us have lots of rental boat companies that a lot of our users do business with. Quite a bit of the time, people renting boats rent boats because they don't have boats, because they don't know how to go boating. But we kind of have this reputation in the Snake River Canyon, like it's just class 3, nothing can happen, anybody can guide a boat down. And with rental boats brings a lot of people who don't know anything about the river, they don't know the dangers they're putting people in, and they sometimes don't have that good of etiquette either, and tend to start fights with people. And we end up in a lot of places. We often have people that get into something awful and scare the living crap out of themselves, and we'll just climb out of the canyon and leave the rental boats there and just be glad they're alive once everybody's got to shore. So rental boats aren't necessarily our friend. We can get strainers just about any time of the year. We have trees go in all the time and find their way to completely block the river. In our wild and scenic setup, we only remove trees on 2 rivers, the Hoback and the Snake, out of our 13. And that's just because we have so much human use. And the human, you know, our policy basically is, you know, with most of the rivers, those trees are for habitat, and we don't cut and we don't manicure the river to be safer for you and your lack of experience or knowledge. You know, you need to take the river on the river's terms as it is. And but when we get on our big use rivers, when we get something like this, if it's all the way across the river, covering more than 3/4 of the river. If it's if it's potentially deadly, like it's going to kill people, and there's no way around it, then we'll go ahead and cut it. And we usually, chain up, and we'll do our best to hold the tree once we do the first cut, and cut it into smaller pieces, and let each piece float off downstream instead of letting a big tree go down and get hung up somewhere else. But we do deal with trees every year, just about, and they can be super dangerous and super scary. If they're really, really bad, or we get a bad jam, we do consider using explosives rather than putting humans in the way of them. It's a last resort thing, but if the cuts are going to be deadly for people, then we will blow something. As I said, we get lots of unprepared parties. Scouts are some of our worst. People without the right clothing, coming at the wrong water level, with a well-meaning dad who's never run the river before, and they end up in bad places and bad results. And it's what's worse is when they don't realize how much danger they put people in, and that they brought 6 agencies out who've gone crazy trying to make sure everybody's alive and chase all their stuff down, and they just thought it was fun and funny, and that the boats both turned over before they even got to a rapid. So lots of unprepared parties, lots of people that are really cold that didn't have the right clothes on, lots of people that are too stupid to know the danger they put themselves in. We have just weird things that happen. We have stuff like this fiber optic cable that's was put in with 1/2-inch screws instead of 3/4-inch screws that keeps coming down off bridges and will hang down across the water and potentially be deadly. I don't know if you ever tried to find how to get repairs for your phone or your fiber optic cable or anything at your house. It involves calling 25 people at 25 different numbers, all can't help you, and nobody ever does anything about them. But weird stuff happens. You might not also know that the state of Wyoming is still being formed as we speak. We get stuff like landslides that come down, and sometimes small ones are not a big deal. They just inundate a parking lot or keep people from getting out or block the ramps, or sometimes they shut down the whole highway system for a couple of weeks while we try to figure out what to do with it. And actually, sometimes they leave us new rapids, which is a really cool thing. And we also contend with fires, fires in the corridor, upstream, downstream, different places. We transport fire crews quite a bit to get to fires. But yeah, we've had them in the corridor on busy days where they've crossed the river and all hell's breaking loose. They're in the campgrounds, and we've had to just do a massive, fast exodus of the river and get everybody out as quickly as possible. Tie your boats to a tree. We'll hope to get you back in a week to get your stuff back, but everybody out type of stuff. We have a lot of on-water conflicts just because of the numbers we do. We also have a surf wave in Lunch Counter that comes in at certain water levels. That is a big, green, beautiful wave that people bring their surfboards out for. And there is something about surfboards that make people into complete buttheads. I think it'd even work on the Pope. But once you put a surfboard in somebody's hand, they become really difficult people to deal with. And these guys generally surf, and then they won't get out of the hole while boats are coming down. And then they get hit by boats and hurt people in the boats, and then they complain that the boats hit them. And we don't feel terribly sorry for the surfers who had every chance to get out of the way. They've been there for the last 3 weeks. They think it's their job to surf every day, and they camp illegally and light things on fire. But so lots of on-water conflicts. We've had gang fights at the takeouts before over people splashing someone's girlfriend in a water fight. It can be a rough place. We've actually had rangers get hands put on them in the past few years, as well as our people have gotten uglier. We also are not at the top of the food chain in the canyon. We have grizzly bears and lots of other wildlife, and quite a few wildlife issues. We do have a regulation about storing food, and it must be locked away. You can't leave food in the back of your truck. You can't leave coolers on the ground. You can't, there's quite a few things that we have to write people tickets for that they're not happy about. And it's part of what we do so we don't have bears in our campgrounds all the time and at our boat ramps. And grizzly bears aren't something very fun to deal with once they're used to coming to a place. And we have hazmats every once in a while. They have trucks that tip over and lose their tanks. We also have big fuel trucks go over, stuff like that. So we do have to get out there and deal with chemicals that are headed toward, pouring towards the roadway. It's easier in the winter when there's ice out. Ice actually blocks stuff from pouring straight into the river for a certain amount of time, and so that's really nice while it happens. But dealing with hazmat is not fun, and especially with Wild and Scenic River. And there's a whole big process in having to do that correctly for the agency and the state and everybody else, and not something you want to deal with. And we also deal with a lot of VIPs. That's a picture of Joe Biden there. He came while he was vice president, but we've had a lot of other famous folks that have come down to run the river, and that can also be a pain in the butt when you have the presidential limousine collection or whatever taking up your whole takeout and nobody can get in and out, and dealing with other security forces and Secret Service and stuff just adds to the fun on a busy day. So getting down to the 10 P's of what we do of dealing with this stuff. Train, tools, and training. Prepare your employees in every way possible. They'll never know enough, but every advantage and comfort possible should be extended to your folks. Always have your crew prepared for this stuff, because the last thing we want is to lose one of our own employees, especially when it's dealing with something that shouldn't have happened just because somebody was not that smart. Whatever swiftwater training level people are comfortable with, offer it to them. It's expensive to do swiftwater, but it's really, really valuable in the end. Even if it's your old folk volunteers and they're only comfortable with, they don't want to get in the water, but they're comfortable with getting, the least certification, whatever. They don't want to be get them something, get them signed up, have them sit in the class, don't make them get in the water, but get everybody up to date about working around the river, because it's imperative. Having somebody jump in to try and save buddy, have somebody standing by the shore, throwing somebody a rope without a life jacket on, any of that stuff can be deadly to your team, and those are the people you should be taking the best care of. And have it done. There's a lot of swiftwater out there. We have about 20 classes around here. Send your people out here if you need to. But CPR and first aid we make mandatory, but we also offer incentives for people who want to go higher with stuff. If they're going to stick around for a while and they're solid rangers, we'll do everything we can. We're special force. We have medical supervision, so we can have practicing EMTs on our ranger staff, which makes things quite nicer. I kind of take a standpoint that if somebody else wants to put a Band-Aid on somebody or run the AED and I don't have to, I'm happy to let somebody else take that liability that's not on my staff. If it's a river guide who wants to do CPR and touch a dead guide, they're more than welcome to. I've done enough of it. I'm happy to hand things to people or give instructions or anything like that. But we also have local EMS come in and share what's helpful at accident scenes and multiple trauma situations, and what the best help rangers can be in giving a size up report on the radio, blocking traffic, rendering aid, assessing patients, etc. Those people are happy to come. They'll do some great training for you, whether it's how to strap somebody to a backboard, anything like that. I've never been told no by any of these folks that I've invited to my trainings for rangers, and my rangers really enjoy that stuff. That's really critical stuff that you don't want to start trying to learn at the scene or with strangers when they come and everybody's under stress and kind of crabby and short with each other. Do this stuff early season and have those hours, take your local EMS guy to lunch for coming out, or appreciate them for coming, but they actually are really happy to get invited and come up to do it. I've taken the the fire ERPIG, the incident response guide, and sort of adapted it to be river specific. And so it's a flip book that fire uses for their incidents. I have to share it for people, but I've created a bunch of checklists for different type of stuff. So when my people are under stress, they can think through things and just go down the checklist and get things done without having to really think about what to do next. There's 2 pages on the screen right now. One's a hazmat IC checklist of what they should be doing with scene management, organizational responsibility, stuff like that. But just the River Ranger emergency checklist is on the right, just even how to call in something, how to make that radio call, dispatch, this is so-and-so. I'd like to report an incident. It is this type of incident, and this is what I need type of stuff. Those things are invaluable when your folks are just feel like running in circles and panicking. It gives them something to focus on and something to think about that they can work through and be an asset. Even when they're not sure how to be an asset, they can be an asset. And one thing that's always very important to me is when we have a really bad scene is to have a incident debriefing session, especially if we have a death on the river. Many times these things will start, things like this will start with our commercial guides. They'll be first on scene. They're always there first. And, they'll call it into, they'll get on the radios and call it into their offices. Their offices will call my dispatch, and the whole show will start from there. But there'll be, office people, office personnel that are relaying things through the office to the dispatch and how many dead bodies or whatever. Everybody gets pretty stressed and everybody's a part of it. We try and have everybody who was involved with the scene, come in later to our big conference room at the Forest Service in town, and just we bring in a professional and we just have a quick talk about it. It's usually a few hours, but kind of what we could have done better, what happened, what we thought, how we could do better later. We don't focus on the bad things that happened or anything we did wrong or anything, but just people get to talk about their feelings, and it's usually people feel better at having come and participated. We don't force people to come, but it's a really good thing to do. Outfitters usually force their people to come, just otherwise, people take this stuff home with them and it can bother them for a while. I still see dead people all the time, especially kids that I've dealt with that are dead in rivers. But talking about it, bringing it out in the open, saying what happened, what your situation was, what you feel, all that type of stuff, I think is invaluable. There's studies now that we shouldn't talk about it. I don't know if I buy into that, but we generally talk about it and have it everybody that had any remote responsibility and participation in the scenes invited. Highly recommend that. Partnerships are so key in having successful resolutions to your scenes. All these agencies you work with are your partners, whether you want them or not. They're going to be there, and it's a lot easier if you're friends first, or at least you have relationships. I deal with multiple counties and multiple EMS, fire, search and rescue, and my outfitter and guides. We create the relationships and coordinate with them long before the accident scene ever takes place. I make an effort to walk into offices, approach these people, schedule meetings with them. I get to know these folks. Knowing first names and having them know you makes so much difference when you meet at the scene. And they're not strangers. I tell them what we can and can't do, what skills and assets we have to offer, what types of things they need. All responders know how to get in my boathouse for a boat loaded and on a trailer and ready to go if needed. I don't care who takes my boat. If they're going to go do good work with it, that's fine. Even if they lose it, I'll go get it out of the lake. But I want people to always be able to use my tools. As a result, I can get into most of the search and rescue stashes and fire stations in my area and steal whatever I need to. I usually bring it back. So that relationship stays good. But sharing and having those relationships is key for getting things and getting people and getting everything going the direction you need to when it happens. Just even understanding the way people function. Some people seem angry all the time, and realizing that guy always looks angry and acts like he's angry, but that's just how he acts, even when he's happy. I have staffed river locations during the summer, and all agencies need to know that we can be called in to set the lower boundary of the search and rescue area if called upon. We can close that box. We'll immediately post an employee or employees to monitor if a body passes or not. By darkness, we'll need someone to bring us lighting on the water, but being able to know that a missing person is between the point last seen and the point where we close the box is much nicer than not knowing if the missing person is between where they lost him and the Pacific Ocean. So little things like that, whatever we can bring to make something go better, we offer it, and in turn, those guys offer that stuff back to us. And the better we know each other, the better we can share that stuff. And sometimes it just comes up in a conversation when we weren't thinking about it, but doesn't when we're actually planning. So, having those stopping by for dinner, going to their meetings and sitting in the back, that type of stuff, really, really good stuff to do. Participate, recognize, and go to other agency tables. They're not a cleaning service to fix your messes. Don't go home until they go home. It's the biggest message I have for anybody. That's where some of the worst relationships are out there that I've ever seen is, a lot of times these are volunteers that are giving their time and are infuriated with your level of urgency when your level of urgency and needs end the moment you aren't getting paid. If you walk off from these people at 5 o'clock and wish them well and come back at 8 in the morning, you've blown that relationship. I rarely can get overtime, so I usually work for free, but I never leave. If we have somebody out there and I have the other volunteer agencies out there, I stay out there on my own. I'll send my employees home, but I will stay out there as the manager, and I'll work all night with them. And it's critical. It's very critical, because if you don't care to stay a few minutes late to deal with the situation in your management area, then there's a huge resentment that comes from that. Offer expertise and training. Best thing you, the best thing you can do is join their organization. Those organizations that respond to your scenes. Join search and rescue, join fire, anything like that. It improves communication, understanding, it makes the government resentment less, and fears dissipate. I teach my SAR how to row. They operate a jet boat amazingly well, but are not sharp on the oars. If I can keep the crew on later to meet volunteers after work a few nights a week, give rowing lessons, I'm a great deal more successful when bad things happen. I also have the ability to secure gear that my program does not have when needed as we share equipment. That trust is crucial and imperative to having the right tools and trained personnel when needed. Provide tools and training. Appreciate the folks that help you and help them be effective any way you can. Find small grants such that you can provide needed equipment or trainings. I try and raise at least $2,000 or $3,000 per year to pay for needed things for my search and rescue, like a drone for searches. My agency won't let me have one no matter what. It didn't stop me from buying one for my search and rescue to have one at my beck and call from SAR. I paid for new Swiftwater life jackets, helmets, and trainings as well. I bought PFDs for my sheriff deputies and other equipment. Making sure that your other agencies have proper equipment and training shows you care about them as people and truly appreciate their help. It makes you a team. And that goes a really long ways when employers are complaining to county commissioners that people are walking off the job all the time to go to that darn Snake River to pull people out. Our biggest thing is never to have these people up at all. I joke with my search and rescue guys all the time that I never get to see them anymore, and that's a good thing. But that is a good thing. If we do our jobs really well, then we shouldn't have to see them as much. And I do take that very seriously in how we deal with people before they get on the river, and how we work with people that we're reducing their workload. And that's important. And that means a lot with our relationships with the counties. And if we're not doing a good job, they're getting called more. Protocols, put together protocols with these other agencies about how things come down when things go haywire. Our fire operation has like a 75-page contract looking thing that's their search and rescue plan with the counties that nobody ever reads. With my search and rescue, I have a one-pager about what each agency's role is, what frequencies will be used. Obviously, we got permissions during the off season with the counties that we can use their frequencies. They can use ours, blah, blah, blah. Our biggest thing is, we're first responders. We first respond and assess, call off, search and rescue, or keep them coming. SAR takes the river, and the county fire takes between the river and the road, and EMS takes the road. And we work in all those sectors as much as possible. Our crew's never really big enough usually to go in the water unless we have more people with us, and we realize that. But we can get to the scene fast. We can assess it. We can find out if it was just a flip boat that got flipped back over and there's no emergency. We can find out if somebody's truly missing or he went home earlier. We operate on the county's SAR repeater, and all of this has been discussed, given permission, decided on long before the season. It doesn't just happen when you all come together for that first possible drowning call. It also gives everyone a chance to talk about words and phrases and acronyms we don't understand. SAR says stuff like car to car, while we say line of sight when talking about non-repeater frequencies. Stuff like that's confusing. Absolutely important to take your crew to visit your local dispatch centers, to introduce themselves, and for dispatchers to ask questions and give tips. Best is to always make sure you take all your dispatchers, doesn't matter which dispatch you're dealing with, county or federal or whatever, on orientation patrols with your rangers. Dispatchers really need to see the facilities they are talking about, know the names and call signs of your people, and they need to know, what the features in the rapids look like that they're talking about in the middle of these emergencies. It goes a lot better when, one, it's personal. When they're talking, they know the ranger they're talking to. They know, they have a general feeling if this guy is trustworthy, he knows his stuff, and they know that, this ramp area is near that, this feature, or, they have a better idea of what the layout is of your canyon, and that actually pays off. It's not just a fun trip for them to go down the river. They have a great time and they love you more and they pay better attention to you, but they also operate better because it's not just in their mind anymore. They've seen it, they've smelled it, they've tasted it, they've been there, and it's personal to them now. Always get your dispatchers out. Pre-plan. Pre-plan with your crew and your multi-agency stuff, and not pre-plan, excuse me, practice. Get to know each other. Go train with other agencies. If they aren't having something, invite them to your trainings. My favorite is the bus in the river scenario, just upstream from the county line, where everybody goes missing and they're in both counties, and the counties have to work together with each other, which they don't like doing sometimes. It's a big learning experience. Tabletop stuff is awesome in the winter. We try periodically to set a full scenario up involving both counties, its agencies, and our whitewater outfitters, our guides. Our guides are our first line of defense, and truthfully, they deal with probably about 95% of our issues, and we never fix them, and we never hear about them. They're the guys that flip boats over at the bottom of rapids and set our non-commercial folks back down and on their way, and we never know a thing. But otherwise, if it's bigger than that, they call us because we don't necessarily always see it. Usually we'll have an after work thing in June, and we invite everybody, and we'll have the call come as that are, say, like 2 boats are over and people are missing, and give them a little bit of information. Raft company starters, they typically are first on scene. They love being included and being part of our responder system. They all have amazing qualifications. They're thrilled to get to use them. Agencies start coming in next as raft companies start locating. There'll be injuries requiring special extrication. Sometimes they may, somebody will try and climb out of the canyon and fall back down it or something. And so they'll have to figure out whether to lower them to a boat or pull them the rest of the way back out of the canyon. And with a raise, it's always different. There's problems that need to be solved of how we're going to deal with this, but we actually do package everybody up and treat them. And I do round up a lot of volunteers that I owe big favors to. There's usually a drowning victim that just needs to be secured and moved on from. It takes a few hours to get all the victims found and off to treatment, and it's followed with a big debriefing with pizza and all different types of refreshments, and talks with each responding agency with guides as to what type of help they need when they show up. And it's always a really popular event. Everyone's glad they came, and everybody gets to know each other. They shake hands, and they know each other by their first name. And you get responses from guides like, I really didn't know that it went like this, or that thing that they use is really cool. Sometimes they get more members just from the guide industry for coming out, but it kind of forms a bond and brings us all together as one big team. And it works out really, really nice. And pre-planning's a big one. Always knowing, the more you're ready for these things to go down, the better it is. AED storage, evacuation routes, having places for helicopters to land. Most of our people leave in a helicopter if they're bad. Put things in place to ease the response and make it more efficient and effective. We have public use AEDs along the river with backboards attached to them at the same location. We have evacuation trails leading to those spots and other places throughout the canyon. Obviously, there was also in places where we most needed to have evacuation trails and AEDs and backboards. We have those areas, they're very subtly marked. Boaters know where they are. We do scenarios with partners and employees, each type of incident in each area. We write things down. We have private landowners with launch space that have given us permission to launch in emergencies on their land to get us closer to the scene when minutes count. That's mainly upstream, but we have upstream landowners that have their own little boat access, and that's stuff that can get us to places where can get us a lot closer to a scene if we're responding in a boat. And as long as I check in with them every once in a while, even if we haven't used them, hey, are we still good to use your spot if we have an emergency? We don't use it for anything but an emergency, not for enforcement, anything else. But they know if the chips are down and we come flying in with boats and flashing lights and stuff like that, they know what's going on, and they'll do everything they can to help us get in and out and take care of us as good as they can. But it's all about relationships once again. We've detailed places on our rescue map that show where one can get eyes on the river. Just get through the thick trees and get down to the river just so they can see, get a good view shed. Places where they can just get a kayak on the water or launch a boat. We detail non-river places where AEDs and other medical gear are obtainable. We meet and brief guides, drivers, and other outfitter employees on these topics at the beginning of the season. We go and visit each guide. We go and visit each outfitter and have time with the guide and driver and employee staff. Just about mainly it's about care and feeding of the Forest Service and how to behave in the canyon when you're operating as a professional. We talk about more than just rescues. We talk about harassment. We talk about how to behave and when you can be on the ramp and what's not okay, that type of stuff. It makes us easier to deal with them directly when they've heard it directly from us and they can't blame their outfitter for not telling them. But going out and talking to these guys and answering their questions pre-season is a really good thing to do. And also sometimes makes us a lot more approachable. And, they do have some really weird questions, but, we like to have those relationships early on. We like to let them know what's expected, and we like to thank them for all the help they do for us in being part of this rescue equation. This is a picture here of Haircut Rock down there on the left. All the water flows into that thing. We get a lot of flips there. So we have a nice evac trail that we built. There's an AED down at the end of the trail, and we can get people in and out of there really quick. And that's one of our heavy use places for dealing with bad things. Pioneer, only you know what's best for your river, and you know where your problems are. Find things that haven't been done before outside the norm if it's called for. I put AEDs in the canyon in the year 2000. I didn't really ask, I just did it, and hope that when people found out about it, it'd be okay. we've saved a lot of lives, and including children with them. And it's been a very good thing figuring out how to do it. It took us a few years. We locked them up at first, and only outfitters and rangers and people had keys. Pretty much now we keep them unlocked, and have had pretty good success with that. They do end up a lot of places. I've been at car wrecks in my life as a fireman for Hoback Junction, and seen my AEDs there that somebody thought would be good to turn their car around and go get, and they've been of use. And they usually end up at the emergency room, and I go back and get them and download the information off them, and we put them back in service right away. Same thing with our backboards. I think we've had one stolen over the years, and we've had one that got shot. I don't know what the guy was thinking when he shot it, like he'd get back at the feds for destroying something that was there to save his life, but that was his deal. Let's see. We did have we came up with we got a commercial repeater channel, a frequency that river guides could talk to us and responding agencies on. It's a very effective tool. Unfortunately, our fire people found out that we were using one of their channels that Forest Service receiving on, and got very upset and took it away from us. So we can't talk now, but it's really nice because guides can report things from the river and get a hold of us, and then we can talk to them, kind of at the scene when we're, 500 feet up the side of the canyon, going exactly where are you? What is the status? How many victims do you have? What is their status? Do we need to bring oxygen? Do we need to bring the Lucas device? Do we need the CPR in progress? What do we need? And that makes us a lot more successful. Search and rescue can talk to them. EMS can talk to them. And, it creates a much better place for how we respond when we respond, and bringing the right things, bringing the right resources for a better conclusion to the situation. This thing on the screen is called a Lucas device. It's a thing that does CPR compressions. I haven't secured one yet, but that's the thing I've been chasing for the past couple of years. They're about $15,000, but one of our weaknesses is that once we put somebody on an evacuation trail, continuing compressions while we're trying to carry a backboard on a narrow trail doesn't do very well, and we're basically not doing good CPR, and that is that's one of our weak points. Is that's a place where we can lose some really good compressions with a patient that may be viable. And so this is something I'd like to have in service sooner than later, just so otherwise we're taking people out with a jet boat. The jet boat works really well if we have adequate water and there's not too much traffic on the water. For some of these, if there's too many boats on the water, and there's not much water, the jet boat needs to operate on a plane needs to go fast so it can stay shallow. If it's not operating fast, then it's hitting rocks on the bottom and it can't operate very well and it gets damaged. So, we try and shut down the river. We try and get people on the shore so the jet boat can have a straight shot out of there, not have to be dodging boats. But it'd be nicer if we could get people up the trail, especially when it takes the jet boat too long to get there, and we know we're losing our patient. But yeah, Lucas device is one of those things that I think is a pioneering tool in river rescue. If we could just get our hands on one and get that money together, keep that critical blood going where it currently isn't happening. And so you have these things in your mind. You have these things on your river where you're failing and could do a better job. Find the solutions. They're different everywhere, but find them, pursue them, research them, make them happen. It's possible. And really consider how you're going to ask for permission to get them, or get them and forget to ask permission for them, or how are you going to get them there in a way that's legal or somewhat legal. Once when we had our first big AED deployment was a 16-year-old who was at our jumping rock and said, "Hey, my heart's going really fast and I don't feel very well." And the kid dropped into cardiac arrest right there. And he was with the scouts. They started CPR and they brought him right down to our boat ramp that was just right down from there. And we popped him with the AED and he came right back to us and was pretty much ready to go dancing. He didn't even want to take the ambulance. But it was a big deal. And of course, it was right when the scouts were doing a world record AED training in some jamboree out east. So it made big news. And so it's like, well, now it's all out in the open that we have AEDs in the canyon and everybody's going to know. The forest came into awareness and I figured I'd either get fired or something. But as a result, management ended up saying, why don't we have these AEDs all over the forest? And so we ended up getting them in all of our fire engines and in our district offices. And so that was a really good resolution to what could have gone a much different direction. But find the things that are going to make for better results. And sometimes if you can't own them, somebody else can own them, or somebody else can donate them. But there's always ways to do things that will be good in the end. Preload. Find the tools that make this stuff easy for you and other responders and river users. If it doesn't exist, make it. We always had trouble with other agencies and responders finding the scene. River users use rapid and feature names. Cops use mile markers. And so that's, getting everybody to the place they're supposed to be with the right equipment and all that type of stuff is difficult. Dispatchers, sure, it's Lunch County Rapid, but what's the mile marker? I don't know. I never look at mile markers. I went ahead and just sort of made a Google Earth coverage that has all the things listed on it. I put it together so every feature going downstream from where the Forest Service starts, where it ends, to our last boat ramp, and the Hoback River on it was on it. And then I put everything in groups. Like on this side of the screen, there's like where the backboards are. Here's all the backboards. Here's all the AEDs. Here's all the boat ramps. Here's all the rapids. Here's all the emergency access. Here's all the group campgrounds. Here's all the helospots, highway pullouts, turnoffs. And so clicking on them, clicking on most of these things will bring up a picture of what it is and what it looks like, even on a turnout. So you're turning into the right place. This one right here, this is a Haircut Rapid here. And then you can see that there's a evac trail that goes down to it. You can't really quite see that there's an AED here. There's an AED there with a backboard as well. And this green thing, if you clicked on it, would show you that it's mile marker 127. So a cop could extrapolate where that rapid is in relation to his mile marker, and the reverse of that as well. So we made that available to all our other agencies. So this is used in a lot of patrol cars. It's used in ambulances. It's used in the SAR vehicles. So people can find what they're looking for.
Hey, Dave, I just want to let you know we've got about a minute and a half, 2 minutes left.
Okay, I'll speed it up. I'm right at the end. Finally, is the press. Press can be a really great tool in doing this. You have, I use annual warnings. I promote partners always in anything I put out. I'd like to put their names in instead of mine. Gives me a chance to educate people about river conditions, CFS, wearing the right stuff. I do put, when we have big scenes, I usually do a write-up on those early season because it's a reason why that somebody will read and think about doing the right thing. I do work with my public affairs people and as much as I can, and have messages about being prepared, having knowledge, gear, and experience to run a safe boat. I do release for rescuers always and point out what went good and wrong, what went wrong. I'm careful to make sure that I always make, when I do releases, that I include that it's a good idea, like in high water situations, to go with my outfitters that are set for those conditions. Otherwise, I can run off their business, and that's not a good thing. So I never want to say anything bad about my outfitters. I want to sort of push my use there that would have gone with my rental boats instead and been another rescue for me. Second, train your people about what to say and not say and post on their social media. Bad things happen in this department all the way up to getting subpoenaed for armchair quarterbacking, judgments made. And I also have that in my little BurPig book. That's the article on my 16-year-old. But that's about it. Prepare, partner, participate, provide protocols, practice, pre-plan, pioneer, preload, and using the press to your advantage. That's pretty much what I got for today.
Dave, thank you so much. That was an awesome presentation. And as someone who's dealt with river incidences and recoveries and rescues and all that myself, I can't stress all of this enough, building those relationships, preparing, doing all these things beforehand, so you can best respond in the moment and make sure that everyone's as safe as possible. So thanks again, Dave.